1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Let me begin with a special blessing to everybody out there. Happy, healthy, good year to everybody. This is Jewish Talk, coming to you live from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on the iHeart and the iTunes app. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com. So hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. You know why I do that every week? Because there are many people who join us at 11 p.m. This great program is repeated every Sunday at 11 p.m. So if you miss it in the morning, you can hear it again at night. Or if those who suffer from insomnia can actually listen to it twice, once in the morning and once in the late night. So welcome, everybody. You can hear me, you can see me. You can see us on WHPC's Facebook Live, as well as under my name, Rabbi Perl. And of course, let's not forget our wonderful listeners on WHPC, as they listen very carefully and join us each and every week. So welcome, everybody. And if you have a comment to make, or you like to, I know that most people are sleeping right now because they had to go to services late last night. But welcome, everybody. I'm going to we're going to divide our program into two parts. The first is going to be talking about an issue that is very much current, that speaks about misrepresentation. Whether an employer, employee, what does the Talmud have to say about someone who misrepresents themselves? Talks about their resume that's disguised as embellishment, and other things like that. And are there times when you can actually lie? Is there an appropriate time to lie? We'll talk about that. Then we'll talk more about the importance of how we look at other people's possessions. And very much, it's interesting that from a Jewish perspective, your respect for another human being is very much reflected as well in how you respect other people's property. And those who have a problem with other human beings and do negative and abusive things are usually the same with a lack of respect for other people's properties as well. But let's leave that to a little later. Let's first begin talking about how the Talmud talks about dilemmas in employer-employee relationships, in misrepresentations. One Talmudical discussion is particularly relevant to the world that we live in today. Among other rules of fair dealing, the Mishnah tells us, this is the term used, it is forbidden to paint a person. In the Talmud, on page 60b in Baba Metzia, one of the tractates, asks the question, Tell us, what is the case of painting a person? What does it mean you paint a person? And gives the example, an instance of an old, white-haired slave who dyed his hair and his beard. And he approached the rabbi, Rava, and said to him, buy me. That's what used to be in those days. And the rabbi said to him, he quoted from the Mishnah, and he said, no. Let poor people be among the members of your household, which means if I have a job available, I'm not giving it to you. I'm going to first give it either to a member of my family or my immediate community. So he turned him down. So he went and approached another rabbi, Rav Papa Bar Shmuel, who bought him. And one day, this rabbi, Rav Papa, said to him, bring me some water to drink. And he went, and his hair and beard became white again. He said to him, look, you see, I am older than your father. So he basically caught him. He had come to him with a hairdo, and his beard had been blackened. But it turned out that he was just painted. And the Mishnah tells us, and the Talmud goes on to explain, that a worker is not allowed to misrepresent his qualifications when he sells himself to the employer. Even if the misrepresentation is passive, after all, the slave never asserted he was a young man, he just presented himself that way. And even if the qualifications are indirect, nevertheless, it is forbidden to give a misleading impression. Dishonesty and deception are a serious crime in Jewish law. The Talmud speaks and says, distance oneself from false matters. There are, however, situations in which Jewish law permits or even demands that one engage in deception. And today we will discuss when it is permissible in Jewish law to fib, F-I-B. Recently, a psychology study found that an average person lies about 150 to 200 times per day. At first blush, such numbers seem to stagger rather than inform. Most people that I know would be very offended if they were told that they tell an average of 8 to 12 untruths every waking hour. Nonetheless, after additional reflection, thought, and careful consideration of the true day-to-day social interactions that all of us go through, we almost intuitively find that lying is not only more common than we expect, is actually more necessary than we as well. Therefore, there are several circumstances where one is permitted or sometimes required to lie. Listen carefully, dear friends. Don't get me wrong. Lying to preserve the cause of peace, not to hurt anyone's feelings, or to provide comfort. For example, do you have to tell the patient how seriously ill they are? If they can't handle it, or it'll put them into a terrible situation? Lying in a situation where honesty might cause oneself or another person harm. Another area, lying for the sake of modesty, or in order to appear arrogant, or not to appear arrogant. For example, someone says to you, teach me this particular area of the Talmud. You're allowed to say that I don't know it, because for the sake of not to appear arrogant. A person has no right to ask someone else about their intimate life. So for the case of modesty, you can lie. Lying for the sake of decency. That means not telling the truth about, as I said, intimate matters. Lying to protect one's property from scoundrels. And there are a whole amazing length in the Talmud that talks a lot about these, and with many, many stories to corroborate this aspect. So Jewish law, let's make it clear though, does not take an absolutist kind of approach to fibbing, and indeed will obligate the individual to lie in various circumstances. As I said, for instance, lying to save a life or to bring peace. But my friends, by no means does this make it light or make light of the seriousness of lying. The Talmud is replete with statements that stress the importance of truth-telling and remarks that the seal of God, what's on the ring, the seal of God, is emes, truth. Again, God hates one who speaks one thing with his mouth and another thing with his heart. The Talmud goes on to say, whoever breaks his word is regarded as though he has worshipped idols. Liars will not receive the divine presence. The extreme importance of honesty is appropriately summed up by the Talmud teaching. When a person passes away, they are presented with a number of questions. What do you think the first question a person is asked when they arrive up in heaven? Have you been honest in your dealings? Despite all of this, the Talmud recognizes there are situations where one may be untruthful, as I've explained. Truth is nevertheless prized, a very important quality in Judaism. As I just pointed out, the Talmud calls emes, truth, as God's own signature. The Hebrew word, and by extension the Yiddish word that we use for truth, is emes, E-M-E-S, emes, comprising of 3 Hebrew letters, emes, Aleph, Mem, Saf. These are 3 Hebrew letters. The composite of the first letter and the word emes is actually a collection of a combination of the very first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Aleph base, Aleph, the last letter, Taf, and Mem is the most middle letter. So the Hebrew word for truth has the first letter of the alphabet, the middle one, and the last one. Take a look at these three letters of emes, and you will see that each of these Hebrew letters each have 2 feet. The actual formation, when you write the Aleph, has 2 feet. Mem has a flat bottom, and Taf also has 2 feet. Recognizing that they reflect that each of these letters provide a sturdy basis upon which they stand. Conversely, the word for untruth, which in Hebrew is called sheker, has a shin, a kuf, and a resh. And if you're familiar with the Hebrew language, the shin, each of these letters actually precariously are perched on one single leg. The shin comes to a point, the kuf has a long foot, 1 foot, and the resh has 1 foot. Means they're very much ready to topple over. The only way they stand is because they're close to each other. Kuf, resh, shin. These are 3 letters that are very one after each other. Kuf, resh, shin. So the Hebrew word for truth is the furthest letters in the Hebrew alphabet. The first, the last, and the middle. And they all have 2 feet. Something which is true has what to stand on, has a basis. But sheker, something which is filled with lies, needs to kind of hang on something else. He has to do this to connect to this, because it has, as we would say in the language, has no feet to stand on. So in light of this important place that truth has in our tradition, I'd like to share with you a collection of Yiddish expressions, and I'm dedicating it to Dorothy Rostein, who is a Yiddish expert about expressions about telling the truth and avoiding falsehood. And I want to say welcome to Karen Dombeck. Good morning to you, Rabbi, and to you, of course, Karen, wishing you too a Happy New Year. So let me share with you some interesting Yiddish expressions that emphasize the importance of truth. It goes like this. First in English: the best lie is the truth. The beste Ligen is the emes. When deciding whether or not to tell the truth, it is important to remember that coming clean, while initially painful, will be much better in the long run. There is I want to say good morning again to Jean Brandenstein, who is also watching us on the WHPC Facebook. I'm waving to you right now. Hello. I'm waving to everybody and all the Facebooks out there. And of course, thank you so much to all those listening as well on WHPC. Thank you for getting up early this morning. And we're discussing some interesting Yiddish expressions that focus on the importance of truth, telling the truth, not embellishing the truth or lying, especially when it comes to employee, employer, to misrepresent oneself. So the first one I expressed was, the beste Ligen is the emes. The best lie is the truth. There's another fascinating one that I want to share with you is, a liar should have a good memory. A Ligener darf haben a guten Zikaron. A lie which seems innocent can sometimes create a web of untruths and fantasies that becomes increasingly difficult to maintain. So whoever's telling lies has to remember the lies they're telling, because otherwise they're going to be found out very quickly, as we've seen. There's another one. If his word or his promise were a bridge, people would be afraid to cross it. In Yiddish sounds much better. Wenn sein Wort wollt gewen a brick, wollt me more gehat a ribber zu gehen. The worth of a person's promise is determined by his truthfulness. If you have lost faith in a person's word, you can no longer rely on his promises. I think that tells it all. Another fascinating Yiddish expression, truth floats like oil over water. Der Emes schwimmt aruf wie Bäumel auf Wasser. A person may think that he has buried the truth under a carefully constructed lie, but it's merely a matter of time before truth will surface. Another one that I often heard, Ehrlich is schwerlich, which means the honest way is a hard way. It's a kind of little rhyme and expresses the fact that it's not always easy to take the moral high road. Ehrlich, to be a good moral person, is schwerlich, is difficult. There's another one, a nar nart a nar. A fool fools a fool. A fool attempts to fool others around him, but the wise person generally sees through the untruths, leaving only the fools fooled. Now, when I was in yeshiva, when younger, I used to hear this a lot. Auf den Ganef brennt das Hittel. I'm sure you know that one. The thief's hat is always on fire. What does that mean? There's a story behind this expression. A robbery occurred, but everyone denied knowledge of the affair. A wise man started to shout, "The thief's hat is burning! The thief's hat is burning!" And he watched to see who would lift up their hands to check for flames on their head. This expression has come to denote someone who denies wrongdoing, but whose words and actions show otherwise. Another one, my friends, fascinating. Promising and loving both don't cost any money. I remember we had a good friend, Mr. David Wall of blessed memory. He would always used to say this one, Zusagen und Liebhaben kosten nicht kein Geld. A promise is only worth as much as the integrity of the person making the promise. Another one, a mirror tells the truth. Der Spiegel sagt euch dem Emes. We can embellish, is that the right word? Embellish, airbrush, and hide. But there comes a time, a moment, when we find ourselves staring truth in the face, as we would say, the Spiegel sagt euch dem Emes. God likes the truth. Gott hat lieb der Emes. It's not always easy or popular to tell the truth, but we can take comfort and inspiration from the knowledge that truth is prized by God himself. In line with what we discussed earlier on, one mustn't tell a lie, but neither must one tell the truth. What does that mean? In Yiddish sounds much better again. Ken liegen to man nicht sagen, aber der Emes darf man euch nicht sagen. There are times when making truth known can do more than good. The truth is the greatest swindle. The Emes is the größte Schwindel. Often, that which is peddled as truth turns out to be a pack of lies, as we most recently saw. Another important thing, a halbe truth, I should say in English, a half-truth is a complete lie. A halbe Emes is the ganze Liegen. Even if not telling a technical lie, when picking and choosing what to say, one can end up misleading and lying. In the Torah, we read how Jacob, heeding his mother's request, disguised himself as his older brother, Esau, so that he could successfully receive the blessings that his father Isaac had intended to give Esau, despite the fact that Jacob was a spiritual giant and the paradigm of truthfulness. Indeed, the attribute of truth is most associated with the patriarch Jacob. It seems that the pressing need to receive these blessings overrode the general prohibition against deception. And we're going to share a little bit more the importance of truth and the permissibility of deception under, I would say, extenuating circumstances. As we mentioned, b'dvar sheker tirchak, the Torah used the word distance oneself from words of falsehood. This is the only sin regarding which the Torah warns us to distance oneself. That's the only b'dvar sheker tirchak. There's a special word used distance oneself when it comes to falsehood. In telling the truth, we emulate our Creator, regarding whom it says, the seal of God is truth. In the Sefer HaChasidim, writes that one who speaks only truth can actually change destiny by decreeing something to happen, and it will. But you have to be someone who always only tells the truth. It's evident from the Talmud that being careful only to speak truthfully is actually a spiritually propitious activity that allows one to complete the years allotted to him by God. It's a good segula. If a person lives a life of truthfulness, he will live his life in a complete way. The Talmud says that there are four groups of people that do not merit to greet the divine presence. One of them is liars. And of course, the results is measure for measure. Through lying, they demonstrate they sought to find favor in the eyes of men, and in doing so, ignored the presence of the Almighty. Therefore, they do not merit to be in His presence. So we may think we're fooling man, we've fooled man, but we can't fool God with this kind of with telling lies. I want to say good morning to B. Zucker. Thank you so much, and to Jean Marie. Good morning to you, and welcome. The Talmud also says there are three types of people that God despises. One of them is those that say one thing while having completely different feelings in their heart. On a technical level, it is clear that when a person accustoms himself to speaking truthfully, people come to trust him. On the other hand, one who's habitually a liar will not be trusted, as the verse says, but a lying tongue just for a moment. That means his believability is short-lived. Despite what we're discussing, again, I want to share with you, under certain circumstances, it is permissible, even commendable to lie. The reason for this is that the biblical commandment against lying only includes a lie that will be harmful to someone else. That is, it is forbidden to lie in a way that might cause death or harm to a person. And nevertheless, in certain circumstances, we are more lenient. As we are told that a lie told to promote peace, as I soon explained to you, is not included at all in the prohibition of telling lies. It seems that since the ultimate goal of this lie is a positive one, it is not prohibited. One may change the truth for reasons of peace. I'll give you an example. We find this in the conversation between God, Sarah, and Abraham. Sarah says to herself, after I've withered, because she's talking about being older to have a child, will I get smooth skin? My husband is old. And when God repeated her comments to Abraham, he said that Sarah had said, how can I give birth when I'm old? Leaving out the fact that she said that her husband Abraham was old. And Rashi explains, God changed Sarah's words so that Abraham would not realize that Sarah had made this denigrating remark about him, that he was an alter kachka. Aaron, the high priest, would employ this method when he would try to make peace between quarreling spouses and friends. He would approach one party and tell him that the other party really is sorry and wants to reconcile. When the person would hear this, he would express an interest in resolving the dispute. Aaron would then go to the other party and tell him this fact, at which point everybody would make up. And the commentators say that it's actually a mitzvah to lie in this way in order to maintain peace. Other examples, just to where a white lie is okay, changing the truth in order to practice humility. For example, one may claim ignorance of a certain Talmudic tractate, even if one actually knows it. Changing the truth in order to maintain modesty. Changing the truth in order to protect someone else from harm or inconvenience. For example, if a host was very gracious and one is asked about this, one should not tell her all about the greatness, as this may cause too many guests to flock to him. On a similar vein, if a person has an incurable illness, God forbid, and informing him will be detrimental to his health, it is better to withhold this information from the person. A white lie in order to protect someone from embarrassment is okay. An example of this would be that one may say that the bride is beautiful and gracious, even if she isn't particularly beautiful or gracious. So using exaggerated expressions, if it is clear that there's an exaggeration, for example, wow, you look as white as a sheet, that's okay. I could go on, and there's a whole area in Jewish life, in Jewish learning, that speaks about this. At the end of the day, though, truth is most important. Despite these allowances, one should always attempt not to say an outright lie, but rather tell what was called as half-truths. Even in these cases, one should try to avoid lying to children, as not to train them to lie. Also, even in these circumstances, one should try not to lie on a constant basis. The commentaries tell us that one may only lie about the past, but not about the future. For example, one may not say, I will do such and such in order to make peace. That's his opinion. So, just wanted to give you this background and to appreciate how important peace is, and at the same time, being truthful, saying the emes is so important. And so embellishments on resumes to pretend one is working when one is not is discussed in Jewish business ethics. One cannot present oneself to an employer and make out that you're actually working and looking for an advancement when in fact you were fired or other kinds of negative things. This is a very, very, very important area that all of us must take into consideration. So again, I want to say thank you to everybody who's joining us on WHPC, on the radio, on the Facebook Live. Tell your friends about us. And we're heard every Sunday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we really have some good time and discuss some very, very important issues. Let us now move on to another very important area that we've been discussing over the last few weeks, different paths to living a life of meaning. There are actually 7 paths. Another term used for these 7 paths are the 7 Noahide laws. And today we're going to discuss a healthy relationship to owning and possessing. You see, in the previous programs, we discussed the need to relate to a person in a healthy and mutual manner, without a sense of ownership or obsession. We need to relate with clarity to the objects in our lives as well. In simple terms, no stealing. We must refrain from taking what is not ours, to live a life of giving, and to be content with what we have. So, our 5th principle in this little series, on a literal level, the 5th principle and directive to living a life of meaning and purpose is not to steal. And this includes overcharging a customer or a client, refuting a claim of money that is owed, and actively coveting what is not yours. Even using another person's property without their permission can be considered stealing on a more subtle level. Of course, today we deal constantly with identity crisis. Identity is, people stealing other people's identity. To be aligned with one's soul, we need to deal honestly in business and all transactions. You see, it's very hard if a person lives a dichotomous life. This is business life and this is private life. We strive throughout our lives that none of our areas, there should be nothing in conflict with each other. As we mentioned earlier on, we talked about peace. You can't say one thing and live another way. You can't say something and then do the opposite. And the same thing is, if we align ourselves with that spiritual side of ourselves, which is eternal, and so important, then it has to reflect in honesty in our speech, in our business, in our transactions. By relying on the Creator, rather than only on our own schemes and business skills, we express our trust in the Creator and the provider of life. Just as we need to have respect for the bodies of others, as we discussed in earlier programs, we need to have respect for the property and dominion of others. In fact, true reverence for others automatically includes reverence for what they possess. And theft, whether literal or subtle, disturbs that unity and peace of interpersonal relationships, communities, and societies. A society cannot live on people telling lies. There's no trust. And it applies to this as well. If you don't really honor someone else and recognize them for who they are, then anything goes. The right to own private property is essential for any safe, civilized society, community, or family. As we explained, we must respect others' bodies and other people's emotional lives. And we must respect our body and our emotional life, as they are sacred gifts given to us by the Creator of all life. By definition, this respect also extends to the property, information, and ideas of others. We can't just make light of someone lying, for absolutely no reason, as we've been discussing. A person who lies has no respect for you. And no respect for you is also lacks a respect for the godliness that you have inside of us. So we can't live this kind of do things on the side when it runs contrary to recognizing the importance of every human being. Although what we possess is not ultimately ours, it is only true. It truly belongs to the Creator. What we have is a gift of safekeeping and alone. Our possessions are creations that were given to us to look after in this world for the sake of the Creator. That's what we're here for. It is not a random coincidence that we have certain possessions and others have other possessions. These loans were not given arbitrarily, rather intentionally and specific to each person. So each of us have what we need, were given for our mission. Each object necessary for that person's spiritual unfolding and actualization in their life. All the particular data of our lives, such as the parents we were born to, how we were raised, the places we have lived, and the schools we have attended, the jobs we have had, the food and music that we enjoy, all these things pass through our awareness because they are connected deeply to our soul. There is a soul connection between ourselves, our surroundings, and all the objects we have owned. They are, in a way, part of us. They came to help us achieve our maximum spiritual, mental, emotional, and functional potentials. So there's a deep underlying relationship between material and spiritual realities. If I, God forbid, went and stole something from somebody else, I'm undermining my belief in God. That's why it's part of the Ten Commandments. An abusive individual of someone else is the same thing. So again, the deep underlying relationship between material and spiritual realities, and scattered throughout the world, are really sparks of divine light, which are connected with our soul. When we are attracted to specific people, places, objects, and foods, it is because we are seeking the divine sparks that are connected within us. Within animate, the vegetables, inanimate objects, in our sphere of perception, anything. The sparks are waiting for us to elevate them back to their source above. we automatically gravitate towards the sparks that are connected to our soul's purpose and destiny. The mission entrusted to each of us is to reveal and elevate the sparks that are connected to our soul by relating to them in ways that acknowledge their creator and sustainer. So if we keep this in mind, it actually, if a person lives this way, it allows the person to live with more hope, with more optimism, and with more freedom. True, sometimes we look around and see a broken and disjointed world filled with devastating hardships, loss, contention, conflict, lying. Yet within all of these fragmentation around us, there's also intensely holy sparks that are made of the light of wholeness. Even within the apparent greatest darkness, there is light. There's wisdom, meaning, and purpose, waiting to be sifted out and elevated back to the source of light. It is our task, our entrusted mission, to be co-creators with the Creator, to reveal that point of goodness, of life, and of hope. But I want to take it a step further. On a deeper level, everything in our life is an extension of our reality. It is there to help us grow and become more loving, expansive, open human beings. From the big things in life, such as an important interpersonal connections, and the smaller things in life, such as the type of watch you have, are all part of who you are. Our self, in this fullest sense, includes all of them. Sadly, most people do not have this integrated, wholesome perspective of life. Rather, they see life as something happening to them, and the objects that surround them as more or less random. Because of this way of experiencing and thinking, as if they are holding life at arm's length, they have much painful friction and resistance in their life. If something challenging happens, the first question they ask is, why did this happen to me? But inherent in this type of question is the assumption that the things that are happening to them are not related to them. They are random and not inherently meaningful. If it seems things are thrown to us at no reason, they are felt like intrusions. Hey, I don't deserve this. And resistance to such friction is the root of all pain. This dynamic is also present within positive events. Say a person makes $1 million deal, wins the lottery. And by the way, I've just read that the lottery is up for grabs again. So say a person makes $1 million deal and wins the lottery, or finds the perfect spouse. When they live in a paradigm of separation, thoughts arise like, how did I ever deserve this? Is this a dream? Am I going to lose everything tomorrow? Again, such thoughts come from a sense that what happens to them, the money they make, the objects they acquire, and even the people they have in their lives are not meaningful parts of their life and sparks meant for them to elevate. But I'm here to share with you a more wholesome way of thinking and experiencing comes from knowing that everything that happens to you and everything and everyone who appears in your life are all part of your essence. Just like you have legs and they are part of you, everything in your life is part of your being. The zip code, the house, the car, everything, your job, it's all part of us. Dismissing them as just happenstance basically denies a basic tenet of faith. Our actions have consequences and are related to perceived rewards and punishments. Instead of dismissing them, we can ask, what is the cause of this event? However, even this suggests a subtle separation, as if the Creator is apart from creation and guiding events from afar. We are still holding life at some, let's call it arm's length. But a deeper way of living is from a place of total unity, in which the world and everything in it is unified expression of divinity. Nothing is separate from God, and nothing is separate from us. Everything is meaningful. From this perspective, the question is not, why did I stub my toe? Rather, what is the message the Creator is sending me through this experience? The same idea applies to our possessions. If our neighbor's house is larger than ours, the question is not, why is my house smaller than his? Rather, what does the Creator want me to learn here? How can I use the house that I have to make the world a better place for everyone? In our early morning Shabbos study, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, everyone is always welcome to join us at 9 a.m. Saturday morning, Shabbos morning at our synagogue for an hour of learning. And let me tell you something, it's an amazing hour of learning, interaction, and I learn so much from my congregants who come prepared, who have studied the Torah portion. So I want to tell you a little story this week. We were talking about, I told a story about money, but how to look at money. And the Rebbe told a story about a particular individual who was found dancing, and the day after Yom Kippur, he was singing a particular song, and he started the song on Yom Kippur, and he forgot about the end of the holiday, and he went all the way into the next day. When people came to the synagogue the next day, they found him still singing this song. And the Rebbe was telling the story about this. This person was, many people actually thought that this story was of the Rebbe himself, who had found himself in this ecstasy of this beautiful song, but that wasn't the case. And the Rebbe explained that this story happened before the Baal Shem Tov. Let me explain to you what the significance of that means. This person that's been a very wealthy person, who anytime you heard that a fellow was in jail, in those days, the barons, the landowners would throw somebody, if they didn't pay their rent, they'd throw them into a pit and force the community to come up with large monies to redeem the person. And this particular wealthy person made it his business to find the money to help people in these circumstances and get them out of their prisons. In one particular place, a man was put into prison, and the baron wanted a huge amount of money. And this rich man figured out that if he's going to be able to redeem this person from the pit, he's going to have to give away his house, everything he owns, everything. But he did it willingly. He wanted to save a fellow. And when he came up with all the money and gave it to the baron, with a smile on his face, said, "Oh yeah, take him. Yeah, he's yours." Basically, the poor man now was dead. So this man, the rich man, felt so depressed. He'd given everything away to try to save this person's life. He'd given everything away, and Nebuch, the man, was dead. One night he had a dream. And in the dream, he was told that all your efforts was recognized in heaven. You didn't waste your time. In reward of what you did to try to save this person, you have two choices. Either you can become a wealthy man, even more wealthy than before, for doing this, or you can have a taste of paradise while you're alive. Get a taste of it. And this man made the choice of, he wanted that taste of Gan Eden, of the paradise. And when he sang that song, this particular song, he got so enwrapped with that taste, which he was experiencing, he forgot about the time and kept on singing through Yom Kippur all the way into the next day. And the Rebbe continued and said that person, if he had lived post the Baal Shem Tov, he would have realized he made a mistake. Surely, being enwrapped and getting the spiritual, experience of paradise on this world is something to yearn for and excited. But the Rebbe said what we learned from the Baal Shem Tov of the importance of this world, this physical world. And if he had taken the option of becoming wealthy again, he could have used his material to save that many more people. We were not undermining, the desire for the spirituality that the person chose. But at the end of the day, material and spiritual don't have to be at each other's throat. It's okay to accumulate and to do and to accomplish and do well and be prosperous, but also apply it and recognize that God is connecting us with whatever capacity, whatever talent we may have to be able to make the world a better place. If a person lives that way, there is no dichotomy in their life. Only a person who sees two sides of themselves can either lie to make people think there's somebody greater, or they can actually abuse someone because they fail to realize each person is created in the image of God. We are deeply connected to the objects in our lives. And this is a real soul connection. Each object presents an invitation for our soul to elevate through this. As objects come in and out of our lives, we may feel very connected at one point with a certain one. If this connection is healthy, then after the purpose of our connection with that object has been achieved, we should be able to let go of it with relative ease. For example, imagine you had a favorite watch for many years, and one day it was lost. If you realize that your soul connection with that object was relative to the inner purpose of having it in your possession, then, when it is no longer in your possession, you can intentionally let it go. You might grieve during the letting go process, but your faith will not be blemished, for you know that nothing is random, and that you have been shown this, that you no longer need a physical connection with that item. I often say sometimes, I've had the experience, hope nobody else has this experience, when someone comes and keys your car. You just got your car, and a guy comes with a key, whatever it may be, and they make a marker right across, around the car. It's happened to me. And the initial reaction is to get all bent out of shape. But then you say, this is a sign from Hashem. It's only material things, only the car. It can be fixed. It can be painted. There has to be a reason why this happened. To remind a person not to get carried away with the beauty of their car, but to get carried away with the beauty of the soul, or the meaning in life with everything we have. Again, I'd like to digress for a second. The Rebbe once told a story about a king who wanted to show his appreciation to one of his members of his community, a peasant, basically a peasant, and he wanted to give him something in appreciation. He's thinking, what should he give? What should he give this peasant? And the king decided, I'm not just going to give him a bag of gold or something like that. He said, that means nothing to me. I want to give something to him that I like, that means so much to me, that I will give it to this person. And the king had a nightingale, a beautiful bird that sung beautifully, beautifully. And that's what he gave to the peasant. He said, here, take this beautiful bird and enjoy it like enjoyment that I have. Well, a few weeks later, the king is driving through that part of the village. And he stops at this peasant's home. He says, how's the bird? How are you enjoying it? So the peasant says, to tell you the truth, Your Honor, the meat was very, very tough, very tough. But when I put it together with potatoes and stewed it all together, it gave the potatoes a decent taste. This story the Rebbe told is an analogy that God gives something that's so important to all of us. He gives a part of himself. We call it the soul, the neshama. God entrusts in each and every one of us the ability to live a life of cohesiveness and synergy, of connection, and to recognize everything is connected. But sadly, sometimes instead of taking the soul and recognizing it for what it is, the divine soul that every human being has, we go and cook it up and use it for things that it's not made for. What do we have at the end? Gornish, nishkin, nothing. A little story just for us to appreciate the importance of what's given to us and why it's given to us and how careful we must be, and to recognize the connection we have with everything around us. All of this really helps us to understand the depth of the negativity of stealing. Taking from someone what belongs to him or her is in a sense stealing his soul. And what the thief now holds in his hands is not just an object he coveted, rather a toxic energy. Someone else's soul, as it were, is in his possession. What he has done does not belong to his soul. It is like holding radioactive material in his hands. The Rebbe once spoke about someone who was stealing books from the library, the Chabad library, that he has bombas in his hands. He has like bombs in his hands. He may think that he has gained something, when in fact he has lost something infinitely precious. When a person steals, he's actually lost his own soul and integrity. He brought into his house someone else's soul's energy, which is out of place and is burning to return to its true owner. Instead of releasing sparks to the Creator, as he's meant to do, he has now entrapped those sparks, and these can only haunt him until they are returned. You see, theft is rooted in coveting. Theft is rooted in coveting, not being happy with what we have, and looking at others, gazing longingly at what they have. Unfortunately, many of us live with a sense of insufficiency and unmet needs, and our thoughts are often at the service of physical survival. This anxiety is in part a psycho-spiritual symptom of being surrounded by a capitalistic society, in which advertising is designed to seduce and inflame our desires, and industry simultaneously creates a false sense of scarcity and lack. In this negative state of consciousness, everyone is living in everybody else's bedroom. Everyone knows what everybody else has, and where they live and where they vacation. People share everything and anything on social media, even the most private of matters. This is because many so-called free people actually live as slaves. They feel such a need for validation of other people that they are enslaved to them. They have given up their power of self-determination and identity and rely on the outside world to tell them who they are and how they should behave and what to pursue. Their whole sense of what is good and noble, what has value and what does not, is based on what they see in others. Our Creator intended to create a world of harmony and well-being, and we humans resisted it and replaced the divine world with a world of loneliness, of deep lack and dissatisfaction. As cravings are indulged, more and more desire is created. Newton's first law tells us that bodies at rest tend to stay at rest, while bodies in motion tend to stay in motion in the direction in which they are moving, unless disturbed by an external force. As such, a desire fulfilled is not a desire quenched. Rather, through the fulfillment of this desire, the person's vessels of desire only expand. They want more. And as the vessels expand, so does the feeling of craving and need for more. First, a person feels dissatisfied with what they have. Then they desire what someone else has. Then they can begin to covet it, meaning doing everything in their power, manipulating the other repeatedly to give or to sell the object. This is because once a person becomes obsessed with what the other has, they may go to unimaginable lengths to obtain it, even scheming to rob it. Interestingly, we only desire what we think we can attain and gain. You may desire to become a billionaire if you see that someone else in your circumstances has done so. If he can do it, I can do it as well. But if you are not a tall athlete, you will never even desire to become a professional basketball. That goal has nothing whatsoever to do with you. But with a deeper understanding of life, we realize that what another person has is not yours, not meant to be yours, and is spiritually truly not in your reach. It has nothing whatsoever to do with you. and so you do not even desire it or imagining having it. In fact, it will produce distaste to imagine procuring something that is not part of our soul's purpose, because you sense that it will only be harmful. A wise person lives with greater contentment and less craving for what other people have. On the contrary, a wise person is filled with gratitude for what he or she has and enjoys a luxurious sense of contentment. As our sages tell us, who is truly wealthy? One who is content with what they have. So there are 4 ways to live in a relationship, with objects in our lives. Indulgence, avoidance, freedom from, and holy re-embracing. Time does not allow us to go into great detail to all of these things, but this is the main area that I wanted to share with you of the importance that we have in life, and using this for us to reach this level. It takes time, it takes thought process to be able to live a life where we come to appreciate everything and recognize that everything in our life has a reason, and what we have and what we don't have. And if we don't have it, if it's proper, if it's appropriate, we can certainly strive for it. But taking away from somebody else's, you're stealing away from the purpose. As a true happy person is someone who's physical as spiritual, as material and spiritual live side by side in a wonderful, wonderful journey of hope and goodness to create a world filled with goodness and kindness. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, wishing you all, again, happy, healthy New Year. Look forward and thank you again. Have a wonderful week.